A couple of years ago, our long-term Sunday morning correspondent, Kerry Murphy, announced that he was joining the sex party.
Oh, that's right.
And I had no idea what he was talking about, and I queried. I said, is that what's happening at Frankston's Pier Hotel on a Thursday night? And of course, the sex party was a breath of fresh air in the political wilderness, headed by the wonderful Fiona Patten. It became the thought-provoking Australian Reason Party, and Fiona is now a major voice in the Victorian Legislative Council. She's supposed to be on leave, but Fiona's with us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Fiona.
Good morning. Good morning, Judy. Good morning, Bob. Shucks, thanks for that.
That's all right. No, it's a pleasure to talk to you. We've had Kerry Murphy, who is very well known down here on the peninsula, who has been talking about this party for years and saying, I'll get you and Judy to join. So,
well, it probably sounds better, though, to say vote reason than vote sex. What do you think, Fiona?
Well, look, I having someone who founded the party, I do have a real emotional attachment to the name Sex Party, but I do agree with you. Judy. I think while it certainly got us attention when we first started, and that is one of the most difficult things for a small party to do, to actually get out there and be seen on the major networks. So it assisted us there, but I think we've probably we've outgrown it, and to attract a larger group, I think a lot more people will vote reason than they will vote sex.
You've achieved so much already. You must have been thrilled when the euthanasia bill went past.
Oh, I was absolutely thrilled, Judy. It was much to the disappointment of many who thought it was going to be hilarious having a member of the Sex Party elected into the Legislative Council. The first thing that I did commit to doing was getting the assisted dying debate happening in a serious and productive way in Victoria.
Took a long time.
And look what we achieved.
Yeah.
Was there a personal connection? Did you have that experience yourself?
I was, I've lost, I think we've all, there wouldn't be a listener out there who hasn't faced a difficult experience with people with loved ones dying. I didn't have a particular experience where I would have said, I wished, my family member, such and such. But Peter Short was a wonderful campaigner on this issue, and we became great friends in the lead up to the election, and he was dying at the time, and I made a commitment to him. So it was my personal commitment to him that really was the catalyst for me for pushing it.
Well, good on you.
Fiona, I have to explain too, you might have noticed a bit of a Brunny accent with Judy. She was actually born in your electorate up in Brunswick.
I just need the Sacred Heart Hospital. It's really great though now, isn't it? It's so cosmopolitan.
Fiona, look, congratulations on what you've done in so many areas. We can't cover it all on this program in the limited time we've got, but with your perseverance, the wheels really did move in 2017. As Judy's mentioned, euthanasia, safe injecting rooms, the same-sex marriage debate which went through, child abuse in religious organisations, just so many areas that needed to be addressed. We do need you. And apart from that, during your career, you also set up the National Museum of Erotica in Canberra.
But you can get on the internet.
Yeah, you can't actually go and see it, can you, Fiona?
No, sadly. I'm actually looking around our bush property up in the Brindabella Valley back on Kosciuszko, and I can see a lot of the museum in my living room.
Yeah.
You would have seen it all, though.
Not hoarders, but there's a fine line.
That's gorgeous.
Well, look, you were a long-term supporter for female sex workers in the conditions.
How are they being treated now?
Look, I think, unfortunately in Victoria, as is the way, we're a progressive state, and so Victoria introduced some of the first sex work laws, not only in Australia but in the world, and that was back in 1985, and we still have the very same ones. And these laws were written in another time, and certainly pre things like the internet. So sex workers largely have now been forced back into a grey legal area. And this isn't healthy for anyone. This isn't healthy for the industry. It's not healthy for the workers, and it's not healthy for the community. So while I think some of the stigma around sex work has declined, there's still a long way to go, but we also urgently need a review of the laws and a modernisation of them.
Well, in another lifetime, you were a sex worker, weren't you? And,
well, that's right. And
I can imagine you a very good one, Fiona.
You know, it's interesting. I mean, I think I just mentioned off air. I'm just we're in the final throes of writing a sort of a memoir. And,
you could do a movie, Fiona.
I think so. I also have to say, for the benefit of our listeners who may not have seen Fiona, that she is a very attractive looking lady. Well, listen, that brings up another subject. With all the drama happening in Hollywood and also in our own city hall with sexual harassment, are women's roles changing, Fiona? Or is this something that is a good or bad thing?
Look, I think it's fantastic that that people are speaking out, and it is so interesting when that it's a weird link, but when you look at the Royal Commission and the exposure to sexual assault that brought out from that hallowed, from those religious institutions which we revered so much.
Yep.
To also see women speaking out and finding the courage to do that. Yeah, we've still got a long way to go, but I certainly think that I used to say this, I mean, it's twee, but as women get more power in the boardroom, we certainly get more power in the bedroom, and I think that certainly is about negotiating sex better and having the power and feeling that we have the power to do that.
Did you see an article, Fiona, by Sir Ian McKellen, who said that did you see that women were partly responsible for sex scandals? You know, of course, he was an actor in the 1960s, but he's quoted as saying actresses will sleep with anyone to get the roles. And he recalls a director showing him photographs signed DRA, Director's Rights Respected. So, the casting couch was, in the 60s anyway. It was just foregone conclusion.
It would sound to me, and I haven't read the article, but on what you've said, I mean, this guy needs to enter into the 21st century.
Yes, I suppose so.
He's obviously got stuck. Actually, it looks like he missed the 20th century even. He's stuck in the 19th century.
I remember when Bob was doing the Don Lane show, there was a lady called Xaviera Hollander. Yeah. Have you heard of her?
Oh, yes, Hollander.
Yeah. And she was so fascinating and interesting. Yes. And Don Lane was interviewing her. And you're too young. And he just walked off and left the poor woman standing there because he was shocked at
it was the interview. Well, a different era. But Fiona, is there any sort of a casting couch prevalent in politics?
Well, I was told when I was told doing public speaking, the two things you never spoke about were sex and politics, and Fiona's doing both.
Well, that's right. I certainly smashed that social norm. Yeah. That's for sure. But look, I have I think those days are past. Although I do hear that if the walls of the members' bar could talk, the stories they could tell. In my little old place where I sit on the red velvet, I've not seen that sort of casting couch. And interesting, I mean, I think I'd worked in hospitality, I'd worked in fashion, I'd worked in a whole range of areas, and now in politics. But I think the least sexist industry that I worked in was the adult industry.
Really? Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
There are far more female directors and far more women on the boards of those companies,
which is a healthy
and leading those companies than there are in just about any industry. And men said please and thank you.
Yeah, it's a healthy thing.
Thank you.
Now, we, as you've obviously realised, Fiona, this is not a political type program. We're not John Fane or Neil, but
Yes.
I found our listeners, particularly over the last year, really are registering dissatisfaction with the major parties, both nationally and state. And I think this opens up, why should people in the election year coming up very shortly, why should people vote for the Reason Party?
Look, I think, apart from hopefully bringing a voice of reason, we can also, I have found that my job wasn't to be combative with the government, but it was to work with the government to get them to achieve better outcomes that they wouldn't be able to do themselves. So, for example, I think, with the sister dying, there's no way that if either of the major parties, if someone put that up to their caucus or to their cabinet saying, let's do this, that they would have successfully got it through. So it's independent voices like myself that can start those conversations and bring them and bring the government of the day with them. I also think that, as much as I love my colleagues in the Labor and the Liberal Party, very often you do think it's a pretty shallow gene pool. Yeah,
I would agree.
And that they've all followed this same well-worn track where they study law generally or sometimes politics at uni. They join student politics. They then go and work for a local member. They then work for a minister. They then get pre-selection.
That's very true.
What are your
I think having a wider range of voices in Parliament is no bad thing. And I think the fact that the government didn't have balance of power in the upper house, which meant that they had to negotiate not just with me, but with the shooters, fishers and farmers, with James Purcell from Vote One Local Jobs, that they had to work with a wide range of people, with a wide range of experiences, representing a wide range of constituents, to get through legislation that I think, frankly, is better for it. So I encourage your listeners to consider putting some independent voices into the upper house because, as we've seen, both I think at a federal level as well, it can be very productive.
All right. Well, as you have said in a recent article, Fiona Patton learns the art of the possible.
Yeah, what are you going to hope to achieve next year in 2018? What's on your bucket list?
Well, to get the memoirs finished for a start.
Oh, yes.
Which is a 2-week deadline, isn't it?
What do you hope to do?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I would love another term in Parliament. So getting re-elected would be on my bucket list.
Yeah.
But also I think following on from the Royal Commission and I don't know if you remember or listeners remember, we put out a book called Hypocrites in 2000 where we called for a Royal Commission and called for greater transparency. And so I think next year I'm going to be looking at ways that the state can ensure that there is greater transparency in religious organisations. And that might be through, I think, financial transparency because some of them run very profitable businesses and pay no tax.
Yes, that's true.
So I'll certainly be looking at that. I think the
churches,
government
they don't
is
pay
too slowly on medicinal cannabis and we really need to...
Judy wanted to ask you. Judy is suffering at the moment from what's it called?
I was going to ask. I was hoping that you might be able to help me with medicinal marijuana because I suffer for 3 years with post-herpetic neuralgia and there's no cure. And I don't know how to get hold of that oil.
Probably not over the air. Hand out some numbers.
Can we do lunch
we'll talk further.
Let's do lunch and we can certainly talk about this. But I think, the Law Reform Commission did a great body of work and recommended that the government take a very broad approach to medicinal cannabis and make sure that it was highly regulated but was available to a wide cohort of people including people like yourself, Judy.
It's chronic pain. It's awful.
Suffering from that sort of pain.
All right. Look, Fiona, we wish you well, of course, for 2018.
I'd love to keep talking to you.
I hope we can talk to you, and particularly...
I'd love to. And Judy will organise to have lunch as well.
Oh,
that'd be great.
I'd love to. I'm on your bus, Fiona.
When the memoirs come out, we would love to do something on it, but I hope we can talk in the meantime, Fiona. And look, thank you for taking time to talk to us today.
And Happy New Year.
All the best for New Year.
Okay.
Thank you, too,
listeners.
Fiona Patton.